Bismillah. Uh, well, I suppose that there are a number of ways to tackle this issue. The first of which would be, of course, acknowledging the fact that there is a misunderstanding and a disparity between the older generation, what we term as the old guard, and the younger folks. Now, you can define however you want who the young folks are and who the old folks are. But I think there's one thing that's called upon here, that being there has got to be an interaction. Islam, for instance, which is my field of study, and it's something that I have devoted much of my life to the study of, clearly calls for the constant interaction and moving of ideas, principles, ideologies into the marketplace of building and constructing. So how is this important? I think that there is definitely a discussion and a dialogue that must be carried on, A. And number two, B, I do believe that there's time for younger folks to come up and take up positions. I know tons of people here who are just great and amazing leaders in every field and every respect. They need to come up, inshallah ta'ala. And then C, finally, I think the other third thing that must be done is that one must find a cause that he or she deeply cares about. We can be fantasized with 20 things, and we're not going to be able to do well in any one of them. We find one cause that you're sincerely and deeply care for, and then move on and use that as a platform to move up. Thank you.
All right, next we have Zaynab.
Assalamu alaikum. It's good to be here. Since I guess this is a youth conference, I'm going to speak on behalf of the youth. Intergenerational dialogue is a very broad topic. And there is definitely miscommunication. And again, as a youth, I kind of empathize with the youth and their view on the subject. I would like to say that we've been talking, you know, this conference has an academic air to it. And, you know, so for me, something that was really helpful was doing a lot of research on immigrants to America, the Irish, the Italians, and when you read on their struggles and the first generation, second generation, you see a lot of parallels between what we're dealing with now and what they dealt with, you know, when they came. So that's something that's important. I'll just say that for now, and then we could have a discussion.
Thank you. I actually had speaking notes that were supposed to last more than 2 minutes, so I'll try and stick to the main points, then I won't be able to go through the whole presentation. The title that I gave when I was asked to address this was Dealing with the Here and Now, and colon, the dislocation of the refugee family unit. I think intergenerational miscommunication or good communication or the lack thereof or the breakdown of communication has to be put in a context that we talked about the importance of context since yesterday. And I'm glad you started this idea of learning from previous immigrant communities that came. So there are both challenges and opportunities, but there is a serious dislocation of the family unit, and an intergenerational communication or intergenerational interaction starts with that family unit. And also there is issues of dealing with the here and now in terms of what is relevant to you guys. We grew up in Somalia as parents, and I'm glad I'm sitting next to a youth person today because I'm a parent, and this is my perspective. It's rooted in parents, and we need to kind of highlight the experiences of, what are the challenges as a parent of raising a kid in this context, in a multicultural context, and I kind of highlighted some points yesterday. And looking at what it is that we are facing as parents, because I think the youth voice is going to be covered. Some of this research comes from a broader discussions that I initiated earlier on in what it means for Somali women raising Somalis who are becoming Somalis in the diaspora, and what they bring to bear in terms of refugee families and the psychosocial impact of the refugee experience, which is going to be felt for a long time, and it permeates our lives. As you can see, I'm trying to kind of rush through this. But what we need to kind of consider is the young generation that are growing up here and the parents who are also trying to raise them here. and the breakdown that might occur, and how their realities might differ in this multicultural, multilinguistic, multi-religious society that is also very capitalist in its economic orientation. And we're dealing with the Somali civil war as well. So parenting challenges, growing up and becoming a Somali Muslim person in the context of multiple and multitude of things, dealing with policies and social and economic policies that are racist, and sometimes just failing people all across, whether the person is black or white or not, because of, you know, public policies are designed, but they always have some unintended outcomes to them as well. So social and public policies that need to be addressed in that sense. And this is not something that is just unique to us. So I want to echo what the little girl here said, and I'm going to call you little girl because I can be your mother. Sorry about that. She's not little girl, okay? Okay, I want to be a mother today, and an old mother. But the thing is learning from other communities. And one of the key things that I signed up for when I was helping organize this was, let's share our experiences, because what we are going through as parents and as youth in the streets of Ottawa and the streets of Minnesota and the streets of here, Virginia, are common. There are commonalities. I was talking to somebody who grew up in London, UK yesterday, and it's astounding how similar the challenges are. By coming together and learning and building on those experiences, I think we're going to learn how to also solve these things. So young generation is going to deal with issues and maybe rebel to a certain extent, okay? Every generation has done it. We did it, you guys are doing it, fine. As long as it does not get you into a place where you don't know who you are and you are lost. One other thing I want to highlight is, if a young person or a mother or anybody makes a mistake, people always learn from those mistakes and they come back. Many young Somalis are making mistakes in the streets of Minnesota, in the streets of Ottawa. I want you not to write them off, not to be this very judgmental, holier-than-thou group that says, oh my God, he is in downtown in a club and I am not going to speak to him. Reach out. Those of you who are young and are focused and alhamdulillah are in the right path, don't be judgmental. Reach out to the brothers and sisters who might be a little bit confused. Parents, and I want to underline this as a parent, children are going to make mistakes until they find their footing. Expelling a child from the house because he did not listen to you adds to the intergenerational communication breakdown. It does not help. It adds to the family unit dislocation. If we are in the mosques, alhamdulillah, those who are not there need to be reached out. We need to forgive their mistakes, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive us and them, and they'll find the right path. But if we are condemning people and judgmental, we will lose more young people than we have already about to lose, and we are losing. I'm a mother, and I know how many Somali boys are in jails. And I know as a parent, we brought these kids to save them from the civil war. We're losing them to the streets of big cities in North America and Europe. And if we clock down and shut down and label them and talk about them, but not reach out and help, we will not gain them back. So the key message for me today is both to the parents and the young people. We have overachievers. We have excellent students, but we have some who are struggling. Let's not leave them on the side. Professor Samatar was talking about yesterday how you can be a multitude or a peoplehood. That really resonated with me. That we need to be a peoplehood no matter where we are, and we look down and pick up those who are falling with us. Because at the end of the day, we brought them here as parents to save them from the civil war, but we brought them into another war of capitalism, of socioeconomic, of poverty, of racism, and it's not going to cut it. I am praying 5 times today, therefore I'll be judgmental and I'm going to run away from whoever is either drinking today. They can come back and find the right path. Don't give up on them. That would be the key message that I'm going to leave with you. And one more thing, I know I'm taking more than 2 minutes, yes. But in 1999, at the Somali Studies in Toronto, Professor Ahmed Samatar said something that really resonated with me. And that was, we have to have criteria where we assess our failures and successes. And it starts with the individual. And one of the things he used as an example of a criteria was 20 years after we've been in the diaspora, we're not still diasporic, we're still a refugee community. What have you done as an individual to better yourself, to improve yourself? What have you done for your family? What have you done for your community? And what have you done for the greater Somalia? Those would be the criteria we need to look at and impose ourselves. I remember that. It was a lecture in 1999. Professor Samatar said that. And it starts here. It starts with us evaluating. How can we help ourselves first? Reach out and help whoever is in that family unit with us and bring them along with us. How can we reach out to the communities in Ottawa, in my case, and in other cities that we live in? And then how can we do what we're doing now? Come together and learn from one another and help each other.
Thank you so much, Fowsia. Professor, can you add on to that?
Well, there is a lot to say, and at least one of my critiques of this conference, it has some important achievements, that there has never really been enough time to get into serious discussions because it's over-programmed, too many activities without getting some depth. And this panel is an illustration of that. How do you generate intergenerational dialogue in 2 minutes? But having said that, let me bullet for you what at least is in my mind now on this issue. One, I want to share with you that being young is not permanent. It's a temporary condition. We have always, all of us have been young once, those of us who might be seen as the older generation. So don't think that this is a permanent condition. 10 years from now, you're going to be another generation. So the time is of essence. You need to understand that. And there is nothing extraordinarily to be proud of or feel good because you are young. It only counts when you know that young is a time that's passing and you need to invest it now.
Can we have questions later? Right now, we're going to give him a chance to speak. I understand, but we will have it afterwards.
But we'll speak later.
We're speaking right now. Afterwards, I'll give you a chance. You'll be the first person.
Yes. So that's number one. Youth is precious but temporary time. So think about that. Second point I want to make is that as part of the older generation in this particular crowd, I would like to suggest to you a very simple idea. Waxaan ku rahay duldulaya in the end they don't land. Waxa weeye guriga aad joogto adigu. I want to speak in Somali, and if you don't speak Somali, too bad. Guriga aad joogto. Listen to this. Guriga aad joogto. Guriga aad joogto. In the house that you live. If you live with your parents, if you live with your family and you are already married, or if you are single and you are living alone, whatever it is, wherever you live, guriga aad joogto waa inuu library noqda. Haddii kale waxa naga dhaxaya ma jirto. Library-guna kitaabka Quraanku ha yaalo laakiin kalidii yaanu oolina adduunyada maxaa wisdom-keegina ha taalo. Aqalkaagu ha noqdo library aad wax ku akhrisato adduunyada kula socoto. Maanta haddaynu intiina isla eegno statistics caawa la qaado la yidhaaho how every household, Somali household. I found out that there are non-Somalis here, so I apologize for this. If you were to take just, even now, random sample of the group sitting here, and you ask, outside of the school that you go to, if you go to college or outside, but in the household, how much of the budget of the household a year goes into buying books and reading material, I have absolutely no doubt, at least in terms of a hypothesis, that it will be extremely insignificant. So invest in your household rather than buying a big TV. Buy, something like maybe the Encyclopedia Britannica or something like this. Second suggestion. I cannot overemphasize the importance of pluralism. Just imagine if tomorrow a declaration is made in the United States that this is a Christian country or Judo-Christian country, and only those really who are Christians or Christians would have the dignity to live a full life. Just imagine what could take place, where we will be. Pluralism is a healthy, civilized, advanced thinking in terms of any culture and society. That you accept difference. Difference in race, difference in gender, difference in intellectual orientation, difference in belief and faith. You have to accept that. And I can't overemphasize the rights of Somalis who are not Muslims. Because if we don't protect them, yeah, in the end, the whole business of democracy is primarily the protection of the minority. We cannot be a minority here which wants to be respected and supported and protected, and we do not do the same thing for our own minorities. So for the youth, grow up on the importance of the issue of pluralism. If you do that, you will have the key to the success of the American society, and you will be able to make contributions to the whole society if you want to do it. Final point. I want to leave with those who speak Arabic. Some of us speak Arabic. Some of us speak Arabic, and maybe even better than some of those who are using that language. Here is a test for you. Yeah. Imam al-Shafi'i, I won't even question you. Imam al-Shafi'i has made this. Imam al-Shafi'i was a great poet. He wasn't just a religious person. He was a great cultural figure, intellectual figure, literary figure, a poet. And here's a line from him. And it is appropriate for this particular moment, if you really are serious about this. Shafi'i says, in Arabic, and we can translate this into English and Somali rather easily, but he says in Arabic, وَإِنِّي وَإِن كُنْتُ الْأَخِيرَ زَمَانَهُ لَأَأْتِ بِمَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعُ الْأَوَائِلُ. وَإِنِّي وَإِن كُنْتُ الْأَخِيرَ زَمَانَهُ لَأَأْتِ بِمَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعُ الْأَوَائِلُ. If I am the last of my history, of my time, وَإِنِّي وَإِن كُنْتُ الْأَخِيرَ زَمَانَهُ, living in the last time, then it is absolutely obligatory for me to do things that others before me have not yet done. Otherwise, there is no point in being a young generation if you cannot think about the new time. And the new time is not going to be a repetition of the old time, whether it is 6th century AD or 9th century AD or 10th century AD. It is next century and beyond, the future. وَإِنِّي وَإِن كُنْتَ الْآخِرَ زَمَانَهُ لَأَأْتِ بِمَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعُ الْأَوَائِلُ. That's a challenge for you. And then the final point I want to add to this is a poem from which we should be doing here. And I was appalled last night to see in the program Arabic poetry. Why not Somali poetry, if we are serious about this? Haddu Arab poetry, then we don't share much. Come on now. You know. But Somali poetry, at the core of this. And here is Tim'ad. Here is Tim'ad, as good as any Arab poet, if you know Tim'ad. And Tim'ad says, very small line, but it's part of a long list. The book is available now. I didn't read that, I didn't write this, some others have written this. And he says, Doqonnima kugu gabowdaan cidi dabiibayne. Doqonnima kugu gabowdaan cidi dabiibayne. I leave you with that.
Thank you all. All right, thank you all. I just wanted to ask Fowsia a quick question. I know that we were talking about the challenges that we were facing, and you were saying that there was parental challenges that you guys are also facing, and that it has something to do with the psychosocial impact of being refugees. Can you touch a little on that?
Yeah, when you are a parent and you're parenting in a multicultural context, but then you are also a refugee. Migration is difficult, and I had a quote yesterday how migration really is not an easy thing to do, even when you have chosen to do so. But the experience of the refugee plight has a lasting psychosocial impact that permeates your life for a long time. If people have been through some refugee camps, there are new terms being coined in Somalia now, tahrib. I didn't know what tahrib was until you read. It's sad. People dying, just running away. So we've been fleeing for the last 25 years. But even if you had been successful in fleeing the first 2 years and you made it and you came out, Somalis are very resilient people. But when you have been a refugee, there is a fundamental powerlessness that happens to you. You have no power over your life. You go where accepts you.
Yes.
So when you're a refugee and you're in a refugee camp in Nairobi and you have no idea whether you'll end up in Australia or North America, there is a fundamental sense of powerlessness. And the parents who are parenting the young generation today have been through that. So they need support. Parenting in Somalia, and it was in my presentation, parenting in Somalia was not done 24/7 by the mother and the father only. Parenting was a communal, extended family business. You don't have the extended family as a parent raising your kid here. I used to teach ESL for 10 years and interviewed some refugee women, and I talked to a Somali girl who had 6 children and said, for the first time in my life, I realized I have 6 children in Ottawa. She wasn't having amnesia when she was having those babies. No, she had support. Yeah. She was having babies and having aunts and sisters who were living with her, taking care of these kids. All of a sudden, she's in a 3-bedroom apartment with 7 kids, and the father got killed on the way here. She is in a daze. She wakes up in the morning and the day is not long enough for her to even organize what the kids need. So when you are parenting in that context with the psychosocial impact of the loss of being a refugee, and then your kids are growing up in an environment where they don't know who they are and they're confusing messages, it is that much more challenging for that parent.
Thank you, Fowsia. Would either Mohamed or Zaynab would like to touch on how that affects us as youth, personal experiences or experiences of those around you? How? As the disconnect, I guess, that comes from being our parents being refugees and.
I think maybe by osmosis, I was affected by that conflict. My parents came here a little bit before the war as diplomats, and most of my frustrations as growing up as a youth in North America wasn't necessarily related to the war or the frustrations of being a refugee. It was more just growing up here, in America, born and raised, and having parents who still obviously were very Somali, who came here, relatively late, not late in life, but they had their childhood in Somalia. I can't really speak on the frustrations. I guess I'll go back to the beginning where everybody kind of made points. I didn't realize we were giving all our points then. For the youth, I think that I've been hearing over and over that we don't have the issue of qabilism, which is true. Although there are some groups on Facebook that'll refute that. I've seen some kids on Facebook throwing up their qabil signs and all sorts of craziness. But for the most part, we're not fractured along qabil lines. But I do think that Somali youth are reflecting. We have always reflected the conflict of our elders in some way. So when we had the war and we had qabil, there were a lot of youth, youth anymore, but at that time who were youth who were into qabil. Now, we know qabil is not an issue in North America, but deen is and religion is. And we have a lot of fractures along religious lines. And I see a lot of Somali youth mirroring that conflict. We're divided, our MSAs are divided. You have the Wadad groups, and then you have the ones who don't practice or who are seen as not practicing, whether you wear hijab, what kind of hijab you wear. And so in terms of the refugee, I think it's not necessarily I can't speak on that, but as you can see, I see a lot of
some of the frustrations that we face, I guess, as youth.
As youth in North America, that's one of the frustrations that we face. If you truly are embodying the characteristics of Islam, and a lot of people have referenced the Prophet Mohammed ﷺ today, which is, of course, a shining example of character and how you move in this world. But if you truly are exemplifying that character, I don't see how that could create a conflict. And so I guess I could. Those are the issues I could speak.
Thank you, Zaynab. Is there anything you'd like to add, Brother Mohamed?
Well, I think much has been said, but I think it comes down to again, realizing that there's not all bad in a people and there isn't all good in a people. Having had spent a decent part of my teenage years right here in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, there's some good things and some bad things here, just as there were some good things in Somalia and some bad things in Somalia. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You embrace the good things, things that will be of benefit to you, your family, your life, your future, which you would like to be 2 years from now. And you leave behind the things that you know are detrimental and a barrier to your development, of course. So assimilation altogether isn't at all healthy. It's filthy. It should be avoided. But staying off and isolation is also filthy and dirty, and it's not going to get us nowhere. After all, we had voluntarily chosen to be here, most of us, or some of us. So selective interaction is what I'm calling for. Embrace the good and leave out the bad. And this applies to any people, not just in Washington, D.C., not just in America. Having traveled extensively, I see the same problems that prevail in just about every society, not just the Somalis. So put your faith first, stand straight. The good things, whoever is embracing them, be they Muslim or non-Muslim, black or white, you take them. The bad things, the evil impact and consequences, you shed them and leave them. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. If we can go to that, can we have, she wants to add something on.
Just real quick, I think what's important today that we talk about is solutions. I think we know, you made really good points in terms of, you know, forbidding what's evil and joining in what's good. But I think for me, what I see the youth needing is how. How do they do that? What alternatives are we providing? If we're telling them don't go to the club, don't go to hang out with bad people, do we have community centers? Do we have youth groups? Do we have parents who take the kids to, you know, Six Flags? We don't. If we're not providing alternatives, it's basically easier said than done. And we're not. And I think as a youth growing up in North America, alhamdulillah, like I think my parents did a great job. We had the Encyclopedia Britannica. My dad made us, you know, before I was in school, he made me copy out books to practice my penmanship and
Thank you, Zaynab.
write book reports.
Sorry to cut you short.
No, I guess, yeah, we need to talk about solutions and how we do that.
Thank you. That gentleman?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Marka hore waa mahadsan yihiin dadkii soo qaban qaabiyay shirka. I want to thank those who have organized this conference. Intergenerational is something that at least I have a lot of struggle with, but there is something that's in reality is happening everywhere we are in Somali diaspora. But I'm also a social worker, and I'm really puzzled by the differences in terms of raising boys and girls in this diaspora, whether it's the United States or Canada or Great Britain or any other community where you have a lot of Somalis or maybe other refugees applies too. Boys in general, I've noticed, we're losing boys in generally and they are suffering and going into like ganging and prison systems. You know, in Columbus, Ohio, it's by, which is not a small, large community, which is the second largest community, has at least 400 youngsters, Somali youngsters, in the legal system or in the prison system. There is a substance abuse within the boys, majority in the boys. And now there's allegedly they were joining also some terrorist organizations. What is the difference in terms of what is creating this gap between creating boys, raising boys and girls? Even if you look into the university settings, you will find more girls going to universities and colleges than boys. But through your experience, what do you think will cause in this generation gap within the same generation, and how can we do something about it?
Our panelists, if you can keep this short, maybe 30 seconds each. Who would like to start?
I could think of a number of reasons. Growing up around, you know, I have 4 brothers and a sister, but and we didn't really have those. We pretty much had the same set of expectations, but I think it comes down to expectations. Somehow, along the way, the boys got the message that the expectations for them were low, and they could, you know, somehow coast through life and find a way. And as a woman, you have to go to school, you have to take care of yourself. Indirectly, it almost seems the message you're getting is that you need to be educated and you need to be self-sufficient because there will be no man to support you. and that may not be the what the message is directly, but that's indirectly the message that we're getting. We have to be educated so that we can take care of ourselves, because we might not have a husband or a man in our lives to take care of us.
It's interesting to really look at what is happening to the boys in comparison to the girls. Even though there are girls who are definitely in the Ottawa area, it's really in the jails as well. But the numbers are, you're right, astounding, the differences. And at a personal level, I think I have some opinions. We need to look at what is going on with the education system, where we are, the public education schools. We need to look at the neighborhoods that we live in, because this is not going to be one little thing. It's a combination of things. We need to look at whether or not the cohort that is now involved in street gangs and have been struggling with education, because there's a large group of Somalis who came in with a deficit in their education from refugee camps, and when they go to schools, they struggle. So the first thing that happens is you drop out of school, but as a young person, there are other areas that you think you can have respect, and that is the schoolyard and the streets, and I have respect. I spoke to boys who say they respect me in the neighborhood, in the basketball court. I can play ball, I can fight. So there are other issues. They're trying to get their confidence and their identity through other things when education is not as easy as they had hoped. And education is not easy, not because the boys are stupid. Sometimes the education system and the curriculums might not be catering to all the learners, and the learners who might have come with some education in their deficit. So it's a combination of things. There is also, I studied social work.
Sorry
there
to
is
cut
also,
you short,
I'm
Fowsia.
just going to add one more thing.
All right,
in
please
terms
quickly.
of systemic, I raised 2 boys and 2 girls. I have 4 kids, and I've watched how they interact with the public in the streets of Ottawa. Boys sometimes, not always, are subjected to more racism than girls. So there is systemic barriers when the police force gets involved. A black male who is involved in anything is not going to get any discretion or any leeway. They're going to, straight away, there's a record. So the discretionary things that are being used systemically, sometimes, you know, our boys are taxed heavily, I think. So there are a combination of things, and we need to not shun them after that. As a community, when we know that they're facing systemic racism, they could be struggling with confidence, they could be struggling with education, we need to be aware of that, and we need to build bridges to save them from
Thank you,
whatever.
Fowsia. Professor, would you like to add something?
No.
All right, do we have another question on the floor?
Do you feel that since girls are like wearing hijab and gono, they have like a harder time trying to assimilate into like mainstream American culture than boys, since they're wearing jeans and you know, they're dressed like regular Americans?
All right, 20 seconds for this one.
So the question is, do we have a harder time? I think we definitely have a harder time. At the same time, just speaking from experience, the way you carry yourself is how people will receive you. You may have these ideas of, oh, people are going to think that I'm oppressed, or people are going to think this. But if you come into an interview or you come into any situation and you're confident and you dispel those stereotypes that they have of you as, you know, speak when spoken to oppressed Muslim woman, you don't really have to say much. It's really how you carry yourself. So whichever way you need to develop confidence, whether it's through having a mentor or a youth group or reading self-help books, personal confidence and valuing yourself and knowing your own worth is very, very important.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to add on anything? All right. That gentleman had a question early on to the professor. Would you like to ask? All right, next question. Okay. He's right there, Guled. That table.
odayaal gabooba marbay gaban ahaayeene buu yidhi sayidka guxushaaga aan kicin mar buu gaananaan jiraye nimaan guuyan dhaqan baa jiro geelal foofsaday.
Thank you.
Could you translate for us, please? This is an English conference.
Huh?
All right, we're moving on. We're moving on. We're moving on.
All right, next question.
Question.
I just want to add one point. I think you have
Roughly like
Do you think that because of the problem that we have seen, the boys are falling behind as compared to girls? Do you think that because the fathers are absent in the lives of their boys while the mothers are ready for the girls? Because I rarely see a father who is with his son at the basketball court. So I think you have to look at that. I don't mean to attack the fathers, okay?
our panelists. Would anybody like to address that?
Well, okay, so I made a comment earlier about the girls getting this indirect message that they have to provide for themselves, and I want to just add something to that because I understand how it could be received by some. If you study history, war, colonization, conflict, it always affects men first. So it wasn't necessarily an indictment of my peers, my male peers, as being, you know, whatever. It's, I understand that men, any entity that seeks to destroy society always targets the men first. So this is something that happened before my peers. It's something that happened to, you know, through colonization, through whatever. So we should handle our young boys with care.
Thank you, Zaynab. Anybody like to add on?
Well, I haven't done any sociological analysis of this. That's why I don't want to say and speak about something that I know very little about, at least at this time. But I guess personal experiences are important, and I can say this to you. In my family, I have a very large extended family. And we have no problems in boys and girls attending to their duties and going to school and doing well. And it is the law of the house and the houses that this is the way it is done, and you do that. For example, there is no, I mean, kids barely watch, maybe 1 hour on the weekends television. Some of them don't even watch television for the first 6, 7 years of their lives, certainly in the house. You see? And the point, the moral of the point is this, is that I think the critical question, and the American conservatives have been hitting on this for a long time, and Obama has picking up this, and I think he is right, it is in the household first. If the household is not able to do its own job in helping these young people, young boys and girls, to understand what their mission is about and their lives are about, then it doesn't matter to a great extent what the external environment does, even if it is very constructive. So the household is critical. The second point I want to make is that American society, and I have lived in the United States more than perhaps any one of you sitting here. I have lived in the United States for 34 years, okay? And I think I can speak a lot about the United States, both experiential and also based on teaching young people for 24 years as a university professor. And here is my wisdom on this. As I was trying to say yesterday, that there is a great deal in the United States, in that public environment of the United States, there is a great deal that is of enormous source of strength for young men and women both. There is also a great deal of seductive, destructive phenomena that is floating in the public sphere in the United States. There are big potholes, and if you fall into them, whether you are a woman or man, it is a major problem. But I have to say, from the little that I know, and it is based just on very, very superficial kind of a reading, that I share at least the hypothesis that young Somali women seem to be more disciplined about the kind of a life they want to build, although some of them fall into the trap of trying to have babies too early and then getting divorced too early. And that's also a phenomenon that we haven't talked about. Yeah? I mean, I was just in a meeting before I arrived here with a group of young Somali women. None of them was older than 23 years old. And each one of them had at least 2 babies, and they're all divorced.
Thank you, Professor. One last question, or
no, I just want to add. I want to add to.
Can we? Okay, go ahead.
Just want to add to the boys maybe falling through the cracks because there are no father's presence or something. It is part of the issue, but it gets too simplistic if we start saying, oh, there's no father in this household, that's why this is happening. That there are other wider community and societal issues. There is socioeconomic. Even if both the mothers and father are in the house, and you are in a poor neighborhood with a poor schooling standard, your kids are going to get exposed. And boys can get exposed because they will get picked on or recruited. So it's a little bit larger. As much as I want to add to the echo of where are the fathers, it's way simplistic to say that maybe the fathers are not there and the mothers are there. If the mothers are there and you live in a high middle income area, both boys and girls are going to succeed sometimes. That's true. I hear you. Sometimes they're there, but they're not there.
I think the point that she's making, if I understood it, which I would agree, if it is accurate, is that there is a greater predisposition to family dysfunctionality if one of the parents is missing there. It is not only in in other cultures, it's like that too. You know, one of the great problems for African Americans is not only the enormous pressure that has come from the history of repression, but it is also the breakdown of the family, and to a great extent the disappearance of the male in the family, and the burden that therefore falls on women, that they have to do everything. So there is that dimension, I think, that has to be understood.
Thank you, Professor. I think we have one last question over there.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. We said a lot and we talked a lot about these issues, about the youth, and it seems like it's all coming down to the household, you know, the family. And I've attended a lot of meetings like this about helping the youth. But my question is, what about the community? What about those, you know, Somali communities? Do they have any plans that in place in order to help these youth that in trouble? If they have lack of parents or, you know, lack of support from home, I'm thinking about maybe the community can stand and, you know, fill those positions for them.
All right, can I have only one panelist to answer this question due to time constrictions? And please keep it short.
I think you are right. You know, life is about concentric circles. So the family is the core of that concentric circle, but there are other circles around it. The larger community is one of those circles. And if the larger community is in disarray and itself dysfunctional, then the feedback that comes to the family, even if the family is strong, is going to be quite difficult and challenging. And the point I want to leave with you with this, and I hope that you are listening, wixii Soomaalinimo la oran jiray way burburtay. Aan runta isku way burburtay. Haddii la soo dhisayo, waxay u baahan tahay shaqo aan weli aan laga hadal bay u baahan tahay. It requires a different kind of work, which can then rebuild the family, it can rebuild the larger community. Laakiin waxaanu ka shaqaynaynaa weli, some of us still think inay Soomaalinimo wax la yidhaaha inay jirto. Anu waxaan idin leeyahay, I'm challenging you. In fact, it doesn't exist. It is very superficial.
All right, thank you, Professor. Thanks to all our panelists. You guys did all a wonderful job. I think next we're going to have Nimco? Oh, closing remarks? We can have closing remarks from them? Okay, we can. So next we will have... We really don't have time, you guys.
Okay. Be honest with the time. You have exactly 2 minutes per. We have to vacate. Be honest with the time, please.
1 minute.
Be honest with the time.
Okay, all right. Well, on top of everything that we have said, we're also going to need to be realistic about what is in front of us, what we have gone through in the past, and we have got to have a hope in what we would like our future to look like tomorrow. We've got to do a number of things, but very quickly, we have to learn to excel at the level that we are in life, to be thinking about something that is 2,000 years down the road, or you know, things of that type are not very productive. At the level that you are, if you're a high school student, excel at that. If you're a college, university, excel at that. If you're a a father, a mother, an engineer, a doctor, so forth, excel at the level that you are, number one. Number two, embrace the good in all that you do. Embrace the good in all that you do. Keep in mind that there are doctors who are working to bring about cure to diseases. There are also doctors who are working 16, 18 hours, 24 hours a day to produce more deadly weapons, medicines to kill more people. It goes both ways. Embrace the good And always know that life is not chaotic. There are principles and guidelines that guide our every one step, and we have got to master them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have one comment for the youth, one for the parents. For the youth, the great African-American intellectual W.E.B. Du Bois talked about, in his book, The Souls of Black Folk, he talked about double consciousness. I think I urge you all to read it, first of all, if you haven't. But I think we're all experiencing a double and maybe even triple consciousness as Muslims, as Africans in America, as male or female. I will say there is a very happy middle ground between, or at the intersection of all our identities. People will make you feel like being Muslim is impossible in America. That's absolutely not true. To the parents, be compassionate to your children. The main message I could say is compassion, compassion, compassion. Recognize the unique pressures that we're facing that you didn't have to deal with, and don't be too proud to ask for help. And even if that's help from, your child's school counselor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, briefly, I want to share with you a poem. Recently, as many other cities have seen, there are some Somali boys who got killed in the streets of Ottawa, and one of the youth in Ottawa, a Nigerian student, wrote a poem. I just wanted to leave that poem. It's a long poem, but I'm going to read just part of it for the benefit of this. This is an open letter, he goes. His name is Kwama. This is an open letter to the youth of my dear Ottawa community. This is the recent death. Do not become yet another statistics, though some may claim that you have been strategically placed in a place where you cannot rise past a certain stage, and the stage for success has been successfully erased from that place in your mind. That harbors grace and creative solutions that would put those that put you in this place to disgrace. The ace of spades that would give you the royal flush to win this hand that has been handed out to you in this game called life lies in your ability to read between the lines. But you must first learn to read what is above the lines before the lines of color are drawn. And you learn to color between those lines the demise of those unfortunate enough to be caught hanging like strange fruits on the street corners. We were told we were born street peddlers, peddling street clothes and corn dogs on the street corners in this foreign Western society. But we are all immigrants on this ancient Algonquin soil. Don't blame the curly locks of your hair for not getting that job. Stay in school, read those books, and acquire those tools that would give you the necessary leverage that you need to blow all expectations. And I urge you to breathe and learn.
Thank you.
Time me on this, 30 seconds. Two things. The primary life for you is here in the United States or Canada. It's not in Somalia anymore. It is here. So you need first to conquer this and become successful here. That's one. Two, I remind you of what I said about Ibn Khaldun. The cultivation of habits of excellence. How you want to translate that, it is up to you. But the cultivation of the habits of excellence is key to winning the big battles of life in the United States or in Canada or wherever you are. And this is where the primary battle is, here in the United States and Canada, not in Somalia.
45 seconds, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Please thank this panel. They did a wonderful job.